Hey everyone, excited to have Randi with us today. She's a visionary executive known for her strategic planning and GTM expertise. She works with Bestler as a senior VP of client engagement, but has a remarkable track record in both revenue growth and talent development. She's also an executive member and co-chair of the DFW, the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex chapter at Pavilion. So, welcome, Randy. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Great. So let's dive into it. Please give us a brief about your professional journey that has led you to become this prominent go-to-market leader. In your
Yes.
bio, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no. I'm a go-to market leader now over sales, marketing, customer success, but didn't start out that way. And I think sometimes untraditional backgrounds can be your superpower. So I actually am a trained clinical lab scientist. I have 100 autopsies under my belt. Did research because I thought I wanted to be a forensic pathologist. Great dinner conversation. But the reason why my training and being a scientist makes me such an amazing go to market leader and why I rose through the ranks very quickly is in as a scientist, you are taught to be a documentarian. So that means if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And process driven. You cannot run an experiment or do something without a process and data. The only way you know how to change something in an experiment when you iterate and fail forward is by looking at the one thing that I can change that will make a difference. And so all of those things, having that continuous quality improvement, process improvement mindset, and that's all we really do in go to market is we have a hypothesis about what the market is looking for, like what problem are we trying to solve, who would use this product or service, and we message and position and we iterate. That is an experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, that's fascinating, right? Like from like bringing the whole clinical scientist angle to customer success. That's definitely a first for us. Uh, And so this data-led approach, right? Like walk us through some of the frameworks which you've built or you'd recommend to a B2B SaaS company for ARR growth. Like what is your data-led approach and your clinical background taught you about that?
Right. So the first thing is, when I first started, I was number one surprised that a lot of the companies I started at didn't have a process and weren't really capturing. So it's like, yeah, they had data, but did I trust it? And so I really dug into always the data we're getting. Can I trust it? And once I had data, like how can I utilize this data to tell me where I should go next? And I always talk about the customer leaves breadcrumbs, or another way to say that is success leaves clues. So I would talk to customers, make sure I documented talking to customers and look for patterns. And that's what data driven is all about. So if we had success, why? How can I replicate that and do it faster? Or if we failed or we didn't win, once again, why? And what can I do differently to prevent that? And I think the biggest thing is, the cost of an action. If someone doesn't, change or make a decision, that is still a decision, the cost of inaction. And considering that like 50% of deals are lost to indecision or inaction, if you can dig in and even convert 5% of those, that can have a huge impact on your revenue. And then if you aren't looking at how you're winning, how do you know what to double down on? And 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 then I also see like referrals and partnerships a huge play. I've been at companies where like, what's your referral program like? Well, it customer success handles that. I'm like, but you can have referral at different milestones throughout the buyer journey, right? So, maybe marketing sends out surveys. Are they asking, if someone's had a great experience? Does someone follow up on that? As a salesperson myself, if someone, it says, I love what you're doing, I always ask, well, hey, I've been trying to get into XYZ account. Do you know that person? Can
Yeah.
you give me a referral? Like, you just have to ask. And I'm always surprised by people and organizations that don't have that baked in. And then always looking at, how I can gain more access. And sometimes it's not about adding necessarily another person to the team to get more access, whether it's inbound or outbound, but it's about partnerships. Partnerships in healthcare has been a great way to open some doors if we don't have access into that hospital. There's so much noise you have to cut through. What is
Right.
the easiest and fastest path? Always.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Uh, you also spoke about, like, how you've witnessed a 1 million to 60 million ARR growth as a GTM leader. Can
Mhm.
you share the playbook and case study with us today?
Yeah, so the first thing was, um, I think sometimes you have to slow down before you can go fast, and that is making sure that you have a process and testing it out with a few people, whether that's 2 AEs, depending on your model, and making sure you have something that you're seeing success with before you add more people. I think a lot of people make that mistake. And when we went from 0 to 60, I was like one of the first 10 employees, and by the end, I think there was 500 or over 500 employees. And one of the things that happened is that as we added more staff, is making sure that you have cross-functional collaboration. This is a hill that I will die on. If I don't own sales, marketing, customer success, no matter what role I'm in, I will make sure that I am partnering with and collaborating with the other folks that help drive revenue. And that is so sales, marketing, customer success, operations, development, everyone has to align. And so I always was able to find ways to speak up, um, insert myself into meetings or places where how can we work together? And I think the reason why we had so much success is that we had daily huddles with cross-functional leaders looking at our OKR, like looking at the organization's OKRs and what we were doing in our respective areas to meet that. So everyone had different KPIs, but all of those KPIs rolled up to the organization's OKR.
Right.
And we all rolled up our sleeves and said, it wasn't sales pointing at marketing, this is your responsibility. It was like, how can we work together to achieve? And, when we would be given, quarter over quarter, we had, retention metrics, growth metrics, and, depending what was going on that quarter, some of our revenue was through expansion versus new logo, but we worked together to meet our growth metrics, and that was the key, is that we 100% collaborated and partnered, in our respective areas to make that happen. And I've been at a lot of organizations, and talked to a lot of peers where they talk about alignment and silos, and I'm like, do you actually talk or insert yourself? Like, does everyone understand how they need to partner and collaborate together? And I think that's one of the biggest misses sometimes, is that everyone is in their own little lane looking at what they need to achieve and not realizing that it's all connected. So, the winning by design bow tie, before that was a term, that's just the way I thought, because in an experiment, you have to start at the beginning and the end, right? Like, you can't just look at one piece and
Yeah.
say, "I change this one thing." If like, you have to look at the whole thing. So I've always had this term in my mind, ecosystem, but Jocko got the bow tie, going for everyone in GTM, and that's great.
Yeah,
That's what an ecosystem is. You're looking at everything.
absolutely. And Danny, like, talk to us about like selling in healthcare. Like you're saying, CFOs in healthcare is a very different beast than regular buyers.
Yeah,
How do
well,
you
just
talk to them? How do you even like, how do you reach out? How do you see their intent to buy? How do you like personalize the messaging? Walk us through that cycle of how do you sell to CFOs in healthcare?
Yeah. So first off, healthcare is just different as an industry. It's kind of like banking, because we're super regulated, right? There's a lot of regulation, and then also there are federal laws like Stark law. Like there are some companies or some hospitals, especially if they're state owned, as an example, that if I'm in a bid process or talking or they're even thinking of going to RFP, they can't talk to any vendors.
Mm.
So you can't even talk to the CFO if there is a bid open that your company might be applying to, even if they don't know if you're in play or not.
Right.
So we segment heavily, first off. So yes, a CFO is a CFO, but I look at the size of the hospital. Is it nonprofit or profit? And then is it state owned? And by segmenting, I know how I can reach out to that CFO, and I'd leverage. We're in 400 plus hospitals nationwide, and this is where leaning heavily on your network and our customers and asking for referrals. Trust is huge in healthcare, and typically a CFO will not just pick up the phone and talk to me unless he or she has already vetted me and my organization.
Right.
So I rely heavily on my network to open doors, and that's partnerships, referrals, and what I call micro events, um, to get people a chance to either meet and talk um, with our customers, even if they're not a customer, so they can hear and gain that trust. And that's how we warm up someone before we reach out. If I just reach out cold, I am wasting my time.
Great. Now that makes a ton of sense. So you spoke about three things, right? Let's go deeper into that.
Sure.
Referral networks, like how do you set up a robust program for that? Because a lot of companies don't have it.
Yeah. So this is where you're having data is super critical and your data hygiene is critical. So in Salesforce, we're always looking at how people are connected. So in healthcare industry is small. So I have some CFOs who have literally been at 6 different roles in my tenure at Bessler.
Mhm.
And every time they go to a new hospital, they bring us along. They introduce us, right? So we have identified people, we score them. If they've given a referral before, we have a database, Definitive Healthcare, that alerts us if they've moved. And if we see they've moved, we're like, oh, who do we know at that location or who do we know around them, based on where they've been before that might know someone? And literally, we utilize that to say, who should we talk to gain access? And then we have some strategic, like through our strategic partnerships, we're also always sharing information so we can better hone that referral score, so we know who is the best person to give us access to that person. And it's taken time. Like when I first came into the organization, I was an individual contributor, director of client relations, and it was my job to talk to our customers. And and that's when I really started working on the data hygiene in Salesforce, and that's really what helped us set up the program.
Wow. And so what about like customer referrals? Like how do you get, like you have a network of 400 customers? How do you identify, oh, like I can ask for a referral, or someone who's my champion has moved to a new place now and they can take us with take you guys with them.
Right. So we have there's an account score, health score, but there's also like a contact score. And there's different things in our algorithm of how we score high. So have they given a referral before? Have they attended events, like, i.e., how well do they know our brand? And then who's surrounding them, and where have they been before? Some CFOs have stayed at a healthcare for, they start there, retire there, but a lot of CFOs do move around, and that's where we, like I said, as they move, where it's like who they've been in contact with is super key.
Right. Wow. So this is great. And you also talked about partnerships, right? Like
Yes.
referrals. And how do you how do you again evaluate partners? How do you build that network?
Right. So for us, we're always looking at complementary. Like, we are TurboTax for hospitals. We help hospitals get a bigger check, right? So we look at who else might the CFO be talking to that isn't in competition, that would add synergy to the conversation, and who might get talked about at the same time, the same conversation. So there are other things that at the same time a hospital CFO might be considering. In the market right now, there's something called price transparency. If you're not in healthcare, it won't mean anything to you, but it's top of mind for CFO. The other thing is looking at their ERP system from a reimbursement perspective. So those are the types of companies that we know. Okay, they would be having similar conversations, but for different things. Can we partner with them? And we have several partnerships in that way. And like I said, that just gives us more access, because I can sit down with my partners and say, I don't have access here. Who do you know? And we literally do that on a quarterly basis. And then it just helps us build credibility
Mhm.
quicker, because once again, you have to be trusted in healthcare to open that door.
Right. And how do you approach a new partner? Like, you'd be like, is it because of a customer conversation, or you're like, hey, we see a great fit, and therefore we should talk? Like, how do you approach them?
So I think it tends to be more, I mean, it's organic and intentional. So organic in the sense that we go to, healthcare conferences at the national and local level. We're talking to our CFOs, and we have a strong point of view, but we're always asking what their initiatives or priorities are for. So we're always looking for patterns of who our customers are talking about, and who in the industry, once again, based on our conversations, might be someone, even though we haven't interacted with them, a good fit. And so we're looking at both the customer, um, like the CFO, what they're saying, as well as in the market, what's coming up that maybe a CFO isn't saying yet, based on, once again, industry standards. So we're looking at both lens. And I think one of the things that the audience can take away from this, it's a repeat of what I said earlier, is always looking end to end. And you think, when I talk about the customer journey,
Right.
never forget internal, right? So you have internal drivers and external drivers.
Yeah.
So internal, from in this conversation, is really what is the customer saying. External is really the market. So I'm always like, what's internal and what's external when I'm talking about anything. And sometimes it's employees, sometimes it's customers. But in this instance, it's market versus customer.
Beautiful. No, that makes so much sense.
So
And
it's a
the
framework. It's a framework, and that's the thing. If I could have anyone take away for anyone anyone listening, is if you can create a framework that can be applied in different ways, that's where you'll have success. And that's really what my scientist background did, right? So I'm
right.
always looking at internal, external factors, but depending on what I'm doing, the internal means and external mean different things. So that's just a little tidbit that I hope helps people maybe look at what they're doing a little bit differently.
No, absolutely. And Randy, like you mentioned about the referral score, like you create a score for all these people based on like their networks and their
Mm.
past referral conversions. Uh, I have not seen too many people do that actively. at building algos around it. You've invested, seems like you've invested a lot in that. Um, what about micro events? You said the third thing is micro events.
Yes. So, as I said, trust is everything.
Right.
And we go to conferences. We do not have a booth. We have a great brand reputation, but what I do is I will have small offsite events around some of these larger conferences. It might be a thought leadership dinner. It might be something fun where there can still be great conversation. Like I was just at the HFMA Annual Institute and did a Top Golf event. But regardless, we have a strategy. We're very intentional. So
Right.
we invite what I call fangelists or some of our raving fans, customers to those events. And
Okay.
then we invite prospects.
Mhm.
And we also invite some of our partners, and they bring people who we don't have access to as well. And what we found is that, especially like at a dinner, for example, a thought leadership dinner, I will have customers and non-customers intermixed, and we usually have a topic, and you know, really having my customers talk about my company and not me talking about my company. I cannot buy that trust. That peer to peer, I cannot buy, but I can replicate it. So I've literally created community without walls in these micro events. And it's been very successful. We can attribute demos and pipeline build specifically to those micro events where people have said, "Hey, I heard this at the dinner. I spoke to so and so. I want to talk more." And I literally have not opened my mouth about what we do. I am just there to facilitate, moderate like a topic discussion about what our customers are going through, but I'm bringing these folks together in a room.
Wow. Yeah, that is, again, there's a flavor to everything you're mentioning, right? Like you mentioned the score for customer referrals. You're mentioning like these micro events having your existing customers, your partners, and prospects
Mhm.
all together. And love the word. What do you say? Revangelists?
Fangelists.
Evangelists.
So they're fans of the company, right? They're fangelists. And we have several really good customers who, you know, um I call it a customer advisory board where, we have given them, access to our software. Try and break it. Tell us where you want to go next, right? We have a tremendous amount of trust with them. They love using the software, and when we've given them a sandbox to play in and say, "Hey, break it," or tell us where you'd like to go next. Once again, um, you know, the customers leave breadcrumbs, success leaves clues. They tell us where we should go next with our product. If you just find those really good customers who are willing to really share, and those customers also are fantastic in these micro event settings because it invariably comes up. They share, well, how do you know Randy? Oh, well, da 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 da. And like I said, I don't have to open my mouth about our company. I am there, as a facilitator moderator for thought leadership and bringing these people together so they can network, learn something, and it just happens that our product gets talked about in the room.
This
It's
is,
really keep it simple. It doesn't have to be hard.
yeah. And Rani, you mentioning evangelists, right? Reminded me of what we keep saying. We have this motto saying, we don't need happy customers. We want raving fans. Like, this is
Yes.
the Tony Robbins school of thought.
Yes.
And yeah, so totally relate to that. This is fantastic. Like, these are all such powerful points. Uh,
And they're actionable. Anyone right now can go out and do these things, right?
right.
Anyone could look at their customer base who is, whether it's been from a survey or a comment, who is something who really is excited about your product. and your customer success team should know, because these are the customers who are really engaged and talking and asking questions, and you've seen a high adoption. Ask them why.
Yeah,
And on the flip side, for those customers, maybe adoption isn't where you want. Those don't underestimate or underrate those, because if you can figure out why the adoption is low, and you can fix that. Think about if you shifted all of your customers who are on that lower end spectrum up through 3 strategic campaigns, like what that might do for you over 6 months.
absolutely. And like, if there are companies which are in the early journey, like 1 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't have 400 customers.
Right.
What would you advise them? Like, how should they approach GTM?
So I will die on my hill that customers follow the breadcrumbs, because the customers will tell you. So this is about being very succinct and finding out from your customers, until your customers can articulate the value themselves, not what you say about your company. What does the customer say that is driving recurring impact? How do you know how you need to scale and position your messaging? And sometimes I think we get ahead of ourselves, and it changes, right? As the product develops, how's the customer using it? I don't know if anyone in our audience has had this happen, but have sat side by side with a customer and say, "Oh, we didn't use it that way, or we didn't intend it that way. I need to take this back to product." Right? And so, we've had instances, or especially in that 1 to 10, what where we thought the roadmap should go versus where the customers thought the roadmap should go. And I think it is so critical as a leader, and also to make sure that you have that feedback loop, because you don't know what to do on the front end of your processes if you are not talking to your customers and truly understand how they are articulate the value and the recurring impact. It's not what you think it is, it's what the customers think it is.
Golden words, right? Like, to live by. Completely with you on that. Uh, we are coming to time. I had so many more
I
questions.
know, I'm like, "It went so fast. What happened?"
Yeah. So one more question, Randy, on that. Like, uh, what is the tool stack you guys use? Like, what is the Martech tool stack, like their databases and other things?
Right, so I think people are gonna be a little disappointed, because we have kept it simple, and there's just things that we do in between. So, we use HubSpot.
Yeah.
Great, for, forms and email and newsletter. Um, Obviously, we have a WordPress site, website, blog, and you'll see a ton of content on there. We have hospital finance podcast. We have 2 webinars a month. Thought leadership is really important in healthcare, so that's really helped with our brand. On24 is what we use for our platform to do webinars, and we can capture information because we've synced it up to HubSpot. And we, marketing and myself, use ChatGPT. So we, will take data and run it through ChatGPT. I have some bots. So a lot of the things that I've done is, um, I guess, homegrown.
Yeah.
And because I'm in healthcare, like I said, everything is kind of de-identified. And I use a Teams ChatGPT to run and just kind of analyze data. But marketing uses it, and I use it to help with messaging,
Yeah.
help with new content, and also, like I said, just putting data in and looking for patterns.
Right. Got it. No, great. Thanks
So
for
it's not, I don't think it's what people expected, right? And there are a ton of great tools out there, but you know, we are, you know, doing really well this year, and I think it's because we've kept it simple, and we've iterated, and we've doubled down on the things that are working.
no, and you're doubling down on the trust network, which is the
Yes.
hardest to build, right?
Yeah.
So there's a reason you're doing so well, because tools are not going to build the trust.
Nope.
They can
Nope.
highlight people you want to build trust with, but you have to go ahead and do that work, that legwork yourself. And amazing, Randy, this has been such an informational session. Like, really enjoyed it. I wanted to talk about Pavilion. We are running out of time, so probably we'll have a second chat. But loved it, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.